Hello everybody, and thank you to our speaker, Laurent Guérin, who is going to present Telosys today. And Laurent is working as a senior solution architect at Capgemini or Capgemini. I never know how to pronounce the name of the company. And he has a lot of experience, having worked for 35 years in the field. And is, among other things, working as a part-time teacher at the University of Nantes. And Laurent is very active in open source, and this is demonstrated by the creation of Telosys that we are going to discuss today. In the invitation to the event, you have a longer description of Telosys, but what I can stress today is that it is a lightweight and easy to use code generator, typically used for scaffolding, but not only for scaffolding. And I think that we will learn the rest from the presentation that Laurent is going to give. I'm very happy to have Laurent as a guest today. I interviewed him many years ago, was among one of the first people that I interviewed, so it's nice to see all the great work that has been going on in Telosys in these years. And so I think it's time for me to shut up and let the presentation begin. Thank you, Laurent.
Okay, thank you, Federico. So I will reuse an existing presentation, and I will try also to give you a few little demos to illustrate the behavior. So, okay. So first, what is Telosys? I will try to introduce it very quickly. At the beginning, the idea was to create a tool, a very basic and light tool for developers. And this tool is designed to generate code. Of course, it's a code generator. And the idea is to generate any kind of code. Here, it can be any type of files. And,
sorry, Laurent, I think the sound is breaking up. Maybe we can try deactivating the webcam and see if it helps.
Yes, okay. I will. Okay. Don't know how to do that with, okay. Is it better now?
For now, it seems good. Let's see.
Much better.
Much better. Great. So, and the idea with this tool is to help developers to boost different kind of projects by generating all the boilerplate code and to accelerate the starting part of the project. So why Telosys? It's just because very often I try to use other code generators, and the problem with this very often with most code generators is that the generator behaves like a black box, and sometimes it's very complicated and very easy to use. It needs a lot of time to set up the tool, to set up the model, and to finally generate files that are not exactly what we want to get. And very often the generated files contains part of codes that are not really well documented or does not correspond to the expectations in terms of code conventions, for example. So existing tools were very often intrusive Sometimes also embedded some kind of framework or piece of code that are not the target for the developer. So the idea is to replace this kind of behavior by something that is more extendable, customizable, and finally to get exactly what we want. So to obtain this, to achieve this goal, we need to be able to customize, obviously, the project configuration, the model, of course, the model at all levels with entities, attributes, and so on, and finally the templates that we will use to produce the code by applying the templates on the model. And with Telosys, everything is completely open. Everything is text files, so you can edit the model entities, edit the templates files on the project configuration. And finally, you can get generated files that can be C#, C++, PHP, XML, HTML, and what you want, any kind of text files. So the most important key points about Telosys is, firstly, it's very simple and very light to install and easy to use. The starting is very fast. There is not an important learning curve. You can download it and start using it very, very quickly. It is completely independent regarding IDE, so you don't need a specific IDE. You can just use it with your best text editor, or even VI if you want. The tool is also completely free and open source, so you can have a look on the source code, on the templates, on everything. There is absolutely no piece that it is not open source. And you can consider the tool as a disposable tool. I mean that it's not a strategic choice for an enterprise or a company or a team. You can download it, install it, use it, and after drop the tool if you don't want to continue to use it. The idea is just to help you to produce the boilerplate part and the repetitive part of your application. And as mentioned previously, it is adaptable and flexible in order to get the expected target files. So the main goal was you decide what you want and Telosys adapts, and not the opposite. So in order to do that, the model is extensible. I will show you what is the model and how you can customize the model with annotations and specific tags. And of course, the templates are also customizable. Another point is that Telosys is able to support composite primary keys and composite foreign keys also. That is not the case for some other code generators. And in fact, it's not so easy to manage composite primary keys. So what is a Telosys model, and how can you create very quickly a model? A model is just a folder. We have one directory for one model, and in this directory model, you have one entity file, a file with a .entity extension for each functional entity. For example, here we have an order, product, order item, customer, category, catalog, and so on. And we just have a model.yaml file to describe the model itself. So everything is text file. There is absolutely no UML. It was an important point at the beginning. Everybody said me that UML is too heavy to start quickly. And the DSL is a very basic grammar. We will see it later. And you can add tags with hashtag here to extend the model. So to illustrate basic entity in a model. So this is an entity file. So a file .entity. This entity describes an order. And as you can see, between the opening bracket and the closing here, you can define 1 to n attributes and 0 to n links. So for example, here we have a primary key. The field name, the attribute name is num, and the neutral type is int for integer, of course. And the type here is completely neutral, so independent of the target language. So we define it here an integer, and if we are using Java as a target language, we could have an int or an object integer. If we have another language, or if we have, for example, Python, we don't have any kind of type, and all the types here are completely independent from the target language. Between opening and closing bracket here at attribute level, you can add annotations. For example, at ID means that this attribute is the primary key or the ID if you are not working with a relational database. It is not null. You can add a label, for example, to generate the graphical user interface with HTML or so on. And there's a lot of annotation. I will show you with the documentation online. This is the Telosys documentation, the doc about the model, and here the annotations. So we have a lot of annotations here with a scope. For example, here abstract means that the entity could be abstract if your target language supports this notion. So the scope is entity. And for example, if I add auto-incremented for a field, it means that the scope is only, it means that this annotation is applicable only for an attribute. And we have also some annotations for link, for example. So this is for the attribute. An attribute can also be a foreign key. For example, here I defined a foreign key referencing the customer entity. It means that the ID of the customer entity must be also an integer here. And this is the foreign key. And after, you can define the links. You can have a foreign key without a link, or you can have the foreign key plus the link if you want. We have all kinds of links, one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one, etc. So by default, an entity here with no that is not defined as an array is referencing to one, and with an array symbol here means that we have many order items. So I will show you now how to create the model to illustrate that. So I have here a basic Telosys CLI. Telosys, you can use it with the command line interface or with an Eclipse plugin. It's as you want, and with any kind of editor. So here it's the basic usage with CLI, command line interface. I am in a folder that will be my project, my Telosys project, with nothing in the folder. So the first thing to do is to init the Telosys project. When you, after doing init here, you have a lot of, just 5 folders here. And if I list the model, we still not have models now, and no bundle of templates. So to create a model, it's very simple. It's new model, foo. So I have now a model. The name is foo. If I list entities, I have no entity. I can create a new entity, foo, another entity bar, for example. And now I have 2 entities. For the command, you have all the documentation here directly in the tool. And if I want to edit an entity, for example, edit entity foo, this is my entity. I can decide to create a code. Short. This can be an ID. And that's it. And each time you change a model, you can check the model validity with a check model. And if you have an error, the tool will detect the error. For example, if I reference an existing entity, or wrong type here, so my XXX entity doesn't exist, and the ZZ here is not a right type. Okay, so it's quite simple to create a model.
Laurent, can I ask you a couple of questions that I see in the chat? Well, Mike is asking if the shell that we have seen is a separate shell or is a command that runs in the normal shell?
It's a Telosys shell. In fact, I have created a command line interface. So I will show you. Here I have just a shortcut, and I have created this shell. It's Telosys. If I open command here, if I run TT is the abbreviation for Telosys, I am in Telosys in the current folder.
Nice.
It has been created with a little framework for command line creation, but everything is a specific development, in fact.
Nice. And there are another couple of questions. Thorsten is asking if these systems scale also to very large models, because he's asking because of the one file for each object. So if you use it also with very large models.
Yes, we have used it, for example, for a very huge project for a French administration last year. And we have chosen to work with DDD, domain-driven development, and to separate each domain in to have one model for each domain. And the only problem, but it's not a problem with the Telosys model, is that with microservices with different domains, it's difficult to maintain the global consistency on foreign key on all the links, and the links, of course, could be broken. But yes, it works. And in the annotations, we have here some notions like context, to define to associate an entity with a context. Notion of aggregate root. So aggregate root is typically for DDD aggregates. And also we have the domain notion. So you can decide to create one model for each domain, or you can also decide to put all the entities in a single Telosys model, and to tag each entity with its domain. For example, when we are in a situation with microservices, but with a single database, and sometimes with yes, a single database, but with a schema for each domain, you can manage your database schema with the domain here and DB schema here.
There are maybe another couple of questions from Peter, and then I will let you resume the presentation. But Peter is asking, well, one more close question. That is, what kind of framework have been used to create this command line interface? If you remember the name, because
yes, I will show you. I have the. Code. Telosys CLI.
So we can remind to everybody that Telosys is open source and available on Meetup.
Is J-line.
Okay, nice. And the other question from Peter is, why not storing everything in YAML file using a command to embed the subfiles? I'm not familiar with YAML, so I'm just reading the question.
Okay, I will show you here. This is, for example, in the model is a YAML file. Okay, so why not YAML for the entities? It's a good question, because I would like to keep a very strong control around all the types here, and the text editors, for example, in Eclipse, because when you are working with Eclipse, I will get it here. I think that I have. I don't know how to hide the toolbar.
Yeah, there is. Well, now I cannot see the toolbar because it's hidden for the people. But somewhere there is.
Okay, I can drag and drop it.
Yeah,
okay.
There is something like hide the floating panel, something like that. But I don't remember where to find it.
Here it's an example of the screen with Eclipse, and I have syntax highlighting and and help when you type. I don't remember the term.
The auto-completion.
The auto-completion, yes, an auto-completion, and so it's a choice to have a specific grammar, and it's more easy, I think, to use than YAML files. Because if you have YAML files, you have the YAML syntax, and sometimes it's quite complicated to use. Not complicated, but you have to respect the YAML grammar, of course. And here it's more free, and it's typically specifically adapted for the Telosys needs.
Thank you. Now I will let you continue and interrupt you a bit later if there are more questions.
Okay. So yes, it's an example of what we can do with different environment, Notepad++, VS Code, of course, Eclipse. So you can use Telosys with any kind of IDE, and for some of them, I provide basic syntax highlighting. Yes, it's here. It's only Telosys commands, so it's not so important. Yes, so sometimes it's important because I have, for example, a user in Germany that and this user using Telosys to pilot its own tool, and use only the command line in batch mode to automate the code production with its own framework and environment. So it's like with Linux. Sometimes it's very useful to have a command line interface. So we have seen the model. So now how can we use the model to produce different type of code? It's very simple. You just have to create, or at the beginning to reuse existing bundles of templates to generate, for example, Java, JavaScript, Postman script, Python, Scala, OpenAPI description in YAML. You can also apply templates for model transformation, and to transform Telosys model into plant UML model, for example. So there is a lot of options and a lot of use cases. So what is a template for Telosys? A template, it's just a .vm file. I mean a velocity file. So velocity is is a well-known framework for templating in Java. And Telosys is fully Java, is written entirely in Java. So Telosys was velocity, was one of the possible choice, and I have chosen velocity because it is Apache Foundation, very well known and documented, and enough to produce the type of code we have to target. So in velocity, it's like in every template engine, you have a part of code that is completely static, and inside you can use your objects with attributes. So when we process an entity at an instant t, we have an entity that is currently producing code. This is entity object with some attributes, and I can get the name of the entity here and iterate for each attribute defined in the entity attributes is a list of attributes for an entity. We also have entity.links, of course, and we can produce the code like this. After using templates on many projects very quickly, it seems important to organize the template, because you can have a lot of templates for one project. And in Telosys, all the templates are organized in bundle. So a bundle is a set of templates, and each bundle targeting a particular part of the application. For example, you can have a bundle to produce the SQL script to create your database. You can have another bundle to produce your persistence layer, another one for the domain classes, the entities, the services, and another one for the REST controller, for example. And you can also add a bundle to produce REST, Angular UI, React front end, etc. So a bundle is just a set of VM files with a configuration that is a template CFG and a README. If you want to discover some templates, all the templates are also on GitHub. So here, we drop the toolbar again. We try, okay. Templates on GitHub. So for example, here it's a bundle of templates for persistence with Spring Data GPA. Here it's a transformation to plant YAML. Here it's a very simple template. With an example here. And everything also is available here in my project. So here I have 3 bundles of templates. One for it's only a basic application. It's to produce a Python application with persistence with SQL Alchemy, and front backend REST and MVC. So here in the CFG file, we can see that we will produce a DAO for each entity, a domain class for each entity. Here, a config file for once. When you have one at the end of the line, it means that this template will be executed just once for all entities. And when we have a star, it means that this template will be executed for each entity defined in the model. And if I open this file, for example, service.p, that is in service, we will generate a Python file with a class, the entity name, with the service as suffix. And after, if the entity has a composite key, we will do that. Else, it's a very basic entity without composite key, so we will use it like this, and so on. And with methods for insert, update, save, delete by ID, delete by object, test if exist, etc., etc. So this is the principle for the templates. So fully textual once again, and yes, I can here. I can list my bundles. I can select a bundle, for example, for SQL Alchemy. I can list the templates. And now I have a model. The model is cars here. My bundle of templates is Python persistence SQL Alchemy. So I'm ready to generate. So it's a last step how to generate. With the CLI tool, we will use gen space every entity space every template, and optionally with yes to avoid the question. And if we look at the Telosys project, I have here a target project. This is my target project because in my configuration, I have decided to generate my code here. So I can generate my code everywhere on any folder with any path. And so I can generate everything. Yes. And now in my target project, I have command files, config.p, etc. I have some DAO with a brand DAO, for example, is with the methods here, company DAO, my entities, and so on. And if I want to customize a template, I don't know, for example, here it's the class, so it's here. I can customize it and add here. Just generate again. I will, okay, and my class.p has changed, of course, with here my new comment. So I can change everything in the template like this. So so we have defined the model. We have see the templates, the generation. So now, how can we use it? So of course, it's each time you have repetitive code in your project, and typically when we have a lot of entities, and for each entity we need to create a screen, DAO, backend REST, for example, or something like that. It's a good way to reduce the workload. And I have a recent example for another project with 60 or 70 entities in a database. And the idea was to create the admin application just to create, update, retrieve all the data in the database. And the workload was estimated around more than 100 days. And we achieve it with 5 or 6 days after customizing the templates. Another point is that you can also create a model from an existing database. It's not in my presentation, but it's on the website. If you have a relational database, implicitly you have a model, because everything in a relational database is a kind of model. So you can use Telosys to create your model. I will show you. There's a file here. And this file is database.yaml. With this file, you can configure a database, for example, here, H2 database. And you can create a model from this configuration. You can list here to define database. So I'm not currently connected to a database, but the syntax is a new model from H2, and of course the H2 is not usable because the database is not present. But it's very easy to create a model from an existing database, and for each table you will get an entity in your Telosys model. And that's it. I think that I have covered the main points about Telosys. Of course, you can get a lot of information with the YouTube Telosys channel, on LinkedIn. There is a tag on Stack Overflow also. A Telosys account on Twitter, and everything is open on GitHub. And all stars are welcome, of course. And that's it. I think that.
Well, thank you. I think it's been really interesting, and I also like very much the example with time for development reduced from 100 days to 5 days. I think it's great, unless you get paid by the hour. Then it may be a problem, but we have already a few questions in the chat. One is from John. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. It is asking, what happens if you need to modify the generated code and then you would like to regenerate it again? I mean, is this something that you support in Telosys, or what do you think about this problem or this use case?
Excuse me, I have a problem with the sound. Could you repeat, please?
Yes, sure. Jan is asking if you support the case in which you generate the code, then you want to manually modify the generated code, and then you want to regenerate again. In this case, what happens? Do you lose the modification? Or?
Yes, I see. The round trip between the generator and the human. Yes. No. It's a choice since the beginning. In the past, we tried to use this kind of generator, and it was a very heavy generator created by a big editor. And I'm not a big editor. I'm not able to do that. It's not so by design, by choice. No, we will never do that because it's very complicated, and even big companies are tried to do that, but it's very difficult. So no, with Telosys, no, never. And the other way to manage this kind of problematic is to use, for example, in Java, abstract classes, and to put, for example, all the generated and generic part of the class behavior in this generated class, and to let the developer create everything that is specific in its own class. That is, and this class is an extension of the basic class. Another way is to organize all the. I will try to show you again. Yes, to organize here your templates in order to generate really only the part that is repetitive, and to isolate all the rest. And if it's not possible, you can consider that Telosys is only an accelerator, and you use it to bootstrap the project. And once it is generated, and since the developer starts to modify something in the code, it's the end, and you cannot regenerate, or you will erase what have been done manually. But there is an option I will show you in the documentation. So problem with the toolbar. Okay. Here you have the target languages. We can look that after, but with Velocity, you can use a set of standard directives that are defined as basic directives by Velocity. And with Telosys, you have some other and additional directive. And especially, you can use it to cancel the generation. And for example, you can check if a file already exists, and decide to cancel the generation if the file is already present on the file system, in order to be able to generate the file only one time, and after to avoid to erase everything.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. And also Jan is writing, thank you. I think he's satisfied with the answer. We have a more general question from Jarno. I'm pretty sure I'm mispronouncing his name, but sorry. He's asking for which kinds of different goals is Telosys typically used?
Or typically for all backends. For example, with microservice, it's very usual to produce. I will try to retrieve the slide here. So it depends. In a recent project, we used it to produce all the backend here from the REST controllers with the entities, services, DTO, etc. on persistence. And we also able to generate SQL script with Liquibase, for example, or Flyway. You can generate your initial model with Flyway or Liquibase here if you want. In another project, we used it only to produce the persistence layer here. It was because this part was very specific and not generic enough to be generated. But the persistence is very frequent to need a very generic persistence layer with Spring Data GPA or MyBatis or pure JDBC or Juke or something like that. And it's very easy to generate this persistence layer. And after, sometimes you have perhaps you have a method that is completely useless. In this case, you just have to drop it after generation, and that's it. And it's very useful also for young developers when very often we have junior developers, and they are not very comfortable with everything in some technical environments. So when you use this kind of tool, not only you accelerate the development, but you also put all your conventions, standards, on the quality expectations, and after the developer is just have to reuse this, and is very guided. And we also use it with JUnit test, for example. If I show you, where is it? Here. Okay. We'll take the latest version. So here we can use it, for example, to generate database decree-based SQL files. And when we use it, for example, for GPA entities, we also generated the JUnit test. So it's very interesting to produce the generated code and also to generate the JUnit test that will be used to prove that the generated code is correct.
I think seems, I guess it also helps a lot these junior developers to have an application that works, and then they can start from there and modifying and try modifying a test and see what happens. And,
yes, yes. And for example, I have another use case that is, if you want to, it's in French, but it's a talk that I gave at Devox France. And
congratulations.
In this situation, it was, I will show you. Just this part. Yes, here it was very complicated because we had a lot of modules, a lot of frameworks, etc. And it was DDD oriented with different layers, the domains, the framework. And at the end, we get a lot of modules Maven. It means that to create a single microservice, we need 8 Maven modules. So for developers, it's very difficult to just to start up and to bootstrap the project when you have to create 8 modules for a single microservice. So with Telosys, in this case, we have created we have a bundle of templates to initialize the project. So to put the frame with all the modules, the POM XML, the README, and so on. And after, it's an example of a DDD model. And after, we generate the domain, the infrastructure with Elasticsearch, the infrastructure with MyBatis, another infrastructure part with RabbitMQ for AMQP protocol, etc., etc. And at the end, we are also another option is to transform the Telosys model. Here it's a model to model. It's we start with a Telosys model and we produce the Open API model. That is a YAML file that is conformed to the meta model Open API. And so you can do a lot of things. It depends of your needs. And the only question is to find the balance between the time you will invest on the templates creation and the time that you expect to the expected gain, because when you start to generate the code, the developers at the end ask to generate everything, but it's not possible. And there is a point at which you have to stop the generation and to start to add the real value-added code, and to avoid to spend 2 days to create a template to generate a file that that you will be able to create by hand in 1 day. So
yeah, it's the typical developer mentality. I want to automate everything.
Yes.
Good. I think it's a good moment to close the presentation, and I think you demonstrated how Telosys, I mean, how much value Telosys can provide. I think it's also interesting that you show that there are also a lot of templates already available that one can use to benefit from it right away without the needs to write their own templates. And so, yeah, I invite everyone to take a look at Telosys. And maybe one just to remind you that we will be back with this meetup in 2 weeks with Riemer van Rosen that will give the next presentation. But for now, I would like to thank you all the participants for the interesting questions, and Laurent for the presentation and for creating this great open source tool. So thank you a lot, Laurent.
Thank you, Federico. Thank you for your invitation.
It's been a pleasure. So have a good evening, and yeah, see you next time in the community. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.